Fyrefly started out as Camp Fyrefly in the early 2000s, and it was a doctoral research project. Dr. Christopher Wells is now a senator, but Chris was a PhD student at the time, and him and his advisor, Andre Grace, they were looking at the experiences of queer and trans youth, particularly in the school system at the time, like in the early 2000s. And so as part of that, he started Camp Fyrefly, which started out as basically kind of resiliency building workshops before the school year started. So giving youth, kind of a long weekend together to work on strategies, supports, all those things to face the school year ahead, because school was a tough place and still is for a lot of kids. And it grew from that. The camps grew and became bigger, more in-depth leadership building camps. We've had 4 running across the country now for it's been over a decade for sure that we've had all 4, longer even, maybe 15 years we've had 4. And this year we're actually adding 2 more. We're adding Camp 5 and 6 finally, so which is great. But as they continued to do the research and talk to youth and discovered what queer and trans youth needed, and in that kind of kept finding funding to add, well, let's do this mental health program, and let's create this program in schools, because kids really need support in schools. We need to be looking at educating and providing resources in schools. And so kept kind of adding programs. And so by the time I got involved in 2018, it had been deemed an institute, a formal institute, rather than a collection of programs. And the faculty had decided that they needed to run it like a not-for-profit, have somebody overseeing all the projects and that sort of thing. So they created the executive director role, and I got hired into it. I was at the Federation of Labour at the time, and it was actually a colleague there who showed me this role and said, "I think this is the perfect role for you." And they were right. And so we run a number of programs full-time. We're a tiny team. We're about 10 people. We have 5 or 6 programs that run constantly. And then we're mandated to do research as well. And we take on grad students, practicum students as well. And then we have a number of other projects that we do on the side. So our work is always focused around advocacy for, and then leadership building and development for the 2S LGBTQ folk around, particularly youth, particularly kind of that 25 and under demographic. And that's so we have Fyrefly in schools. We do a lot of work in K-12 schools, a lot of work in faculty of undergraduate faculty of education too. We have specific Indigenous programming too, created by and for queer and two-spirit Indigenous folk. We have mental health services. We have a day program for folks who are unhoused or street involved or survival sex work involved. So we have a location here in Edmonton and now in Calgary as well, that provides a place for folks to come, to eat, to hang out, to play games, to get clothing, to get access to resources and so forth. And then in 2024, we were successful. We put in a bid for a federal project to create a national 2S LGBTQI+ entrepreneurship hub. And we put in a proposal for that along with the Faculty of Business with eHub, the chair for the creator of eHub, Dr. Michael Lunsbury, in late 2023. And in 2024, we found out we were the successful ones, which has been incredible. So we've added, that massive undertaking to everything else. And we've been running that project now for 2 years, and we're continuing it on. And so again, so that's all ages, but it just advances on that, creating community, creating networks, sharing resources, building strength and solidarity in 2S LGBTQ communities across the country, and also recognizing that economically, we communities thrive if we provide opportunity and include folks, across the board, right? And we've, and so we talk a lot about the massive under and unemployment of queer and trans folk relative to skill level. We see that particularly trans folk, approximately 85% of folks who identify as transgender are under or unemployed. And so, so we're looking at this, the value added is for quality of life for individuals, but also for communities, and that too, if we can actually find, ways to promote and support folks, who are finding creative ways to support themselves. And that's what we find too. A lot of queer and trans folk are trying to support themselves because they either don't feel that they belong, or they've been pushed out of regular job, situations, and that too, which I think is also where organized labor comes in. And I've talked to labor a lot about this. We need to learn why queer and trans folk leave workplaces, what happens in those workplaces, and that as well, and that pushes people out and do better in that way too. So, but this has been, it's been a phenomenal experience where we get to do the research, and then we get to put it into action ourselves, and that too. So so that's Fyrefly in a nutshell.